Hey, everybody, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at former President Bill Clinton's hospitalization. You guys sent over a bunch of articles from ABC News, NBC News, CNN, and it looks like they're all covering this developing situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even with everybody saying this isn't a major crisis,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard not to think about all of Clinton's past health issues when you see headlines like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like he's been through a lot over the years, and these articles do a good job reminding us of all that. All three of them report that he is 78 years old and was admitted to MedStar Georgetown University Hospital
In Washington, D.C.
in Washington, D.C. on Monday afternoon.
Right.
And they're saying it was for testing and observation after he developed a fever.
Yeah, and it's really good that every single source is emphasizing that he is in good spirits and receiving excellent care.
Yeah.
One source even told NBC News that the situation is not urgent and that he will be fine.
That's great to hear.
And Clinton's deputy chief of staff, Angel Ureña, also told CNN that he's hopeful Clinton will be home by Christmas.
That's good to hear. But like you were saying earlier, it's hard not to think about all of his past health issues. The articles mention a few pretty significant events, like the quadruple bypass surgery in 2004 and the 2 stents inserted into a coronary artery back in 2010.
Yeah, and we can't forget about that 2005 surgery for a partially collapsed lung.
Yeah.
And these are all major procedures,
Yeah.
each with its own challenges and recovery periods.
Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those procedures? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening are familiar with the terms, but maybe not with what they actually entail.
Sure. So bypass surgery is a very serious operation. It's where surgeons literally create detours around blocked arteries in the heart to restore healthy blood flow. And stents are tiny little expandable tubes inserted into arteries to keep them open.
So those are less invasive.
Yeah, they're less invasive, but they still require very careful monitoring.
Then there's the collapsed lung, which, as I understand it, can be incredibly painful and make it really hard to breathe.
Yeah, exactly. And we also need to think about Clinton's hospitalization back in 2021 in California.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, he was there for 6 days because of a urological infection that spread to his bloodstream,
Oh, wow.
which is a serious complication. And, it's important to say that this latest fever could be related to something totally different, but it's still significant given his history.
Yeah, for sure. It really puts things into perspective. Each of these events would be a major hurdle for anyone to overcome. And yet Clinton seems to bounce back every time.
It really does. It speaks to a certain level of resilience.
Absolutely. The articles all mention how, despite all these health challenges, he has remained active on the political scene. For example, he campaigned vigorously for Kamala Harris.
And he recently released a memoir about his life after leaving office. And he's been traveling and doing book signings and public appearances. He even spoke at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago just this past August.
Which brings us to a really interesting point. Several of the articles mention a kind of poignant moment from his speech at the DNC.
Oh, you mean the part where he said, I want to say this in the bottom of my heart. I have no idea how many more of these I'll be able to come to.
Yeah, exactly. Hearing that now with the news of his hospitalization, it just hits differently.
It really does. It suggests an awareness of his own mortality. Not in like a morbid sense, but rather an appreciation for all the opportunities he has, especially considering his health. And it's interesting to think about this in the context of his recent memoir.
His memoir, that's a great point. We haven't even talked about that yet.
Well, I think it's worth exploring. What's fascinating to me is that the articles all mention that he's been incredibly active promoting this book, traveling speaking engagements, the whole 9 yards. What do you think that says about him?
It definitely says something about his determination. I mean, he could easily choose to live a quieter life, but he seems driven to stay engaged and share his story. And I'm wondering, does his memoir address any of his past health struggles? Because if so, hearing his perspective directly, especially in light of this current situation, that could offer a powerful glimpse into how these experiences shaped him.
That's a great point. It would be fascinating to dive into that aspect of his memoir.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's delve into his memoir and see what he has to say about his health challenges, and then we can discuss how that relates to his recent activities and that really impactful statement he made at the DNC.
Sounds like a plan.
Great. So we'll be right back after a quick itty.
It's interesting to think about his memoir with this recent hospitalization. The articles mention that he's been so active promoting it, traveling speaking engagements, the whole 9 yards. It really makes you think.
It does. He could easily choose to live a quieter life at this point, but he just seems driven to stay engaged, to connect with people and share his experiences. I'm curious, does his memoir touch on any of his past health challenges?
It does. He actually doesn't shy away from discussing the impact those events had on him,
Yeah.
both physically and emotionally.
Wow.
What really struck me was his reflection on the 2004 bypass surgery. He talks about how it forced him to confront his own mortality and reevaluate his priorities.
Yeah, that must have been a profound experience. Do you think it changed his outlook on life?
I think it definitely played a role in shaping his perspective. In the memoir, he describes how the whole experience gave him a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper appreciation for time, almost as if he came out of that surgery with a heightened awareness of his own vulnerability, but also with a stronger determination to make the most of every moment.
Yeah, and that's reflected in his actions, right? He didn't retreat from public life at all. He dove back in with like renewed energy, campaigning for others, writing his memoir, engaging in these important conversations.
Exactly. And this brings us back to that poignant moment at the DNC when he said, "I have no idea how many more of these I'll be able to come to." It wasn't just a throwaway line. It was really heartfelt,
Yeah.
acknowledging his own journey and his resilience and his appreciation for the opportunities he's been given.
It's almost like he's saying, I've been given a second chance and I'm not going to waste it.
Exactly. I think that sentiment really resonates with people. It speaks to like a universal human experience.
Yeah.
The challenges we face, the choices we make, and the resilience we find within ourselves.
It's a powerful message, especially coming from someone who's lived such a public life, with all its highs and lows. I mean, we're talking about a two-term president, someone who's been praised and criticized, loved and vilified, and yet here he is facing these health challenges with grace and determination, still contributing to the national conversation.
It's really a testament to his character. Despite all the controversies that have surrounded him, there's a certain tenacity about Bill Clinton that you just can't deny. He keeps bouncing back, always evolving, always striving to make a difference.
And I think that's what makes this hospitalization so compelling. It's
Yeah.
not just about a former president getting sick. It's about the human story behind the headlines. It's about resilience and perseverance and the choices we make when we're faced with adversity.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful figures are ultimately human, just as vulnerable as the rest of us.
And yet they can still inspire us with their strength and determination.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, how does this latest chapter in his life affect his legacy? How will history ultimately judge Bill Clinton?
That's a great question. It's hard to say for sure, but I do think this current situation adds a new layer of complexity to his story. It humanizes him in a we haven't really seen before.
I agree. It allows us to see him not just as a political figure, but as a man facing his own mortality with courage and grace. And it really makes us consider the full scope of his life, the triumphs, the failures, the complexities, and how they all contribute to his legacy.
It's a legacy that's still being written.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so fascinating. As we wait for more updates on his condition, it's a good time to reflect on the impact he's had, both positive and negative, and what it all means for us today.
Well said. So, as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, let's remember that Bill Clinton is currently hospitalized with a fever, but all indications are pointing to a full recovery. In the meantime, we're left to ponder the complexities of his life and legacy and the lessons we can learn from his experiences, and how his story continues to resonate with us even decades after he left the Oval Office.
And we can't forget the larger question this all brings up. What does it really mean to lead a meaningful life, both personally and professionally?
That's a really important question for all of us to consider. And with that, we'll take a moment to gather our thoughts before moving into our final reflections on this fascinating and ever-evolving story. Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive, haven't we? From breaking news to personal reflections, it's been quite a journey.
It really has. And as we wrap up, I think it's the perfect time to go back to that question we asked earlier. How will this latest health scare impact Bill Clinton's legacy?
Yeah, it's almost like these moments give us a whole new way of looking at these public figures. It makes us rethink their contributions and complexities.
Yeah, it encourages us to look deeper and think about their entire impact, acknowledging both the good and the bad.
And when you think about Clinton's story, it definitely has both.
Oh, absolutely. He's a man of amazing achievements,
Right.
but also contradictions.
Mm.
And, this current situation with his age and his health challenges,
Mhm.
it all makes us look at his legacy in a new way. It makes us think about not just his political wins and losses, but also his resilience, his ability to grow, and his constant engagement with public life.
That idea of him constantly being engaged really sticks out to me. Even after serious health issues and all the public scrutiny, he comes back writing, speaking, campaigning. It's like he needs to contribute, to share his experiences and insights.
Yeah, it shows how much he believes in dialogue and staying involved,
Yeah.
even when it would be easier to just walk away.
And that brings us back to that moment at the DNC. I have no idea how many more of these I'll be able to come to. It means so much more now with his hospitalization.
It really does. It wasn't just him saying something. It was him reflecting on his life and knowing that he's not invincible and appreciating the chance to keep being a part of the conversation.
So as we finish up this deep dive, we want to hear from you, the listener. Considering his age, this recent health scare, his commitment to public life, what do you think Bill Clinton's legacy will be?
What do you think is his most important contribution? What parts of his story really connect with you and your values?
It's a tough question with no easy answers, but it's one we should be asking.
We hope you keep thinking about this. Talk about it with your friends. Share your thoughts online. Because really thinking about these complicated stories and trying to understand them, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep diving deep.